There's not an ad director or sales leader, vice president of sales I've met who doesn't think selling with data would be valuable, that would help them. The problem has been it's sort of been in the too hard pile. I remember the days I was in Belden. I was at Belden Research for 10 years. We would deliver a beautiful, expensive finding of studies, and often nothing would happen, right? Thousands of dollars spent, they'd sit in a 3-ring binder in some sales leader's desk. Pulse has solved that problem. The data is easy to use. We don't want our sales representatives to be researchers, right? That's the last thing we want to do, is for them to get in a conversation about the methodology or the sample size with a prospective advertiser. We want it to be easy. So over the 20 years I have represented Pulse Research, the program has gotten simpler and simpler and simpler to use. And another reason I'm thrilled to be here, because there's a handful of folks in the audience or at the conference who have seen Pulse before, they haven't seen it today, so I'm eager to get their feedback. So here are our objectives today, real simple. It's a very 35,000-foot overview of Pulse. This is not a sales pitch. We literally, thanks to West Virginia Press Association, are going to give you some tools you can leave with today. If indeed there's additional interest, then we think that'd be fantastic. But you're going to get some tools, actually probably be emailed on Monday. It'll be in your hands. I'll talk about them. I'll refer to them today. And by the end of Monday, after you've reviewed this material, you'll be able to prospect easy. You'll be able to engage with advertisers in a way you've never engaged with them before, using terms that they are appreciative of. We'll talk a little bit about the data itself. There is an offer that West Virginia Press will make. You give me an audience of 20, 25 people, I will burden you, if you will, with some of the thoughts I've had over the years. I've been in sales or research for the 35 or so years I've been supporting the newspaper world. There are not a lot of researchers who have sales background. It's kind of an odd duck that I am. I'd be remiss if I don't say at least one time the fact that I could go when I'm hiring, because I hear from every single sales leader I have, hiring's a problem. If I can show to my prospective hire, let me show you the tool I'm going to give you, which you can pull up on your phone to sell more business. It helps you hire. It is that simple, and we didn't think of that idea. As an ad director who told us that. We'll have time for question and answers. I will also anticipate some of those. I have one slide with the 4 or 5 questions I get asked most frequently, so I'll blast through those. So that's what we're going to do today. This is what you see when you log into Pulse today. Sales wheel. There's not an organization, whether it be media or ICE or lingerie or tattoos, who's not trying to have some sort of sales wheel. But let me tell you the background of this story, because this is a new look to Pulse. This is as of maybe January or February of this year. Literally, John Marling, the president of Pulse, and I were talking to an advertising director, and he said to us something that bothered us pretty significantly. He said, I am not sure that our sales reps know which function, which piece of Pulse is connected with which piece of the sales wheel that we go to market with. And that was sort of a revelation. So we came up with our own 8-point sales wheel. And you may or may not have 8 points to your sales wheel. If you do, this may mirror it, but most don't. And you certainly don't do all 8 steps if you have 8 every single day. You may prospect on Mondays and you try to identify 2 or 5 or 50 accounts you want to call on over the week, but you call them over the course of the week. You may do that on Friday. So anyway, we identified 8 steps. All of these steps won't be in your usual modus operandi, but many of them will. I decided not to use the internet today. I'm going to do screenshots just so we don't have any load times, but what you're going to see exactly mirrors what a rep would do when he or she logs in. So the very first thing when you go to prospecting is this. We have 5 prospecting solutions. Some of these will be familiar. Many folks have a best of the best. If sometimes we have a program that's aligned with that, you can enter your own suite of special sections. So a handful of different ways. But what gets used most often is the top prospects. I'm going to spend a little bit of time talking about the top prospects. This is what a rep will see when he or she clicks top prospects. It's a big grid of data. There are 535 categories, merchant categories, that are in this grid. They are organized here by the sold rank, number 1 all the way to 535. And what that is doing is mining the user base of Pulse users. There's about 400 newspapers in North America, 3,000 or 4,000 sellers. And we're organizing them based upon what's being presented most often. And the thinking is real simple. If I'm an ad rep, if it's working in Clarksburg, if it's working in Albuquerque, if it's working in Toledo, maybe it'll work for me. Probably will. If I'm an ad director, I can go to those and assign those accounts. If I'm a sales rep, I can go identify them myself. So this is what you see the very first thing when you're trying to prospect. You can search in a handful of different ways. For example, I clicked the top of the closing ratio column, and the whole 535 are organized based upon the ones with the highest closing ratio to the lowest. As you'll see, the closing ratio for City Center was 100%. So my bet is 1 or 2 presentations have been made to city centers across the user base, and it's 100%. But indeed, this might be a very slick way to organize the data and assign your team based upon highest closing ratios. It's just like wisdom of crowds, right? We're mining our user base. If I hit the next one, I typed in 3 letters in the search field at the top. And up you'll see outdoor clothing, clothing accessories, men's, women's, etc., and then clock. So literally the system narrows down the categories, the merchant categories, based upon the letters you type in there. It could be automotive, it could be sports, it could be anything you can think of, and it will find the categories in there. What we see clients do often is if they've got an upcoming fashion special section, they'll type in fashion, or they'll type in clothing, or they'll type in shoes, and they'll get a list of businesses in their community. So if I am interested in, let's say, women's clothing, I know that 37% of the time a presentation is made against women's clothing, a sale is made. The average value is about $900. We entered that information. Again, we're mining the user base, because what we could see was sales reps spending a lot of time trying to determine what to present, how much to ask for. So I'm not saying this is the right answer, but it gives you an answer, and I would say to anyone, it's got to be that or greater. Got to be that or greater. And if I'm going to go find, I just click the find button. Let's say I want to go find women's clothing. This is what I would see. A map of your geography. I plugged in downtown Charleston just to give you an example. It could be any zip. Up pops clothing stores, women's clothing stores, or stores that sells women's clothing. It could be discount stores, etc. The point here is real simple. You will find the clothing stores in your geography. You can do a couple things. Right here, you can add it to your planner. You can add it to your planner there. That's Pulse's solution for an activity tracker, a call list. Literally, I as sales rep can build a call list. I as sales management can create a call list and give it to my team. This is nothing fancier than Google data mashed up into Pulse. So you might very well do that already. You're doing probably Google for prospecting. Maybe you're doing Facebook, certainly mining direct mail, flyers, etc. You're doing the things that you probably all do. But the reason I mentioned the Google, it's going to be good. It will not be perfect, right? If I'm a new merchant in town, I won't show up there until my mobile presence has become more pronounced. And if Sammy's clothing store closed, I still show up there for a while. And if I'm an old store that is not showing up, then it's a perfect way to have a sales conversation about selling digital, right? Because if I'm not showing up on Google and I've been around a while, it's because I have no mobile presence, right? So this is what you might see in any of your communities. I think I reminded myself, you can build, I put in those little arrows mostly to remind me to say it, but I remembered to say that. So you can create call lists. That's one of the relatively new pieces of functionality that Pulse has added. because what sales reps tend to do, I can say this because that's really what I am at heart, is call on the same accounts again and again and again, right? This is going to be true for every community we're in. We penetrate, if you can use that term, 2% or 5% or 8% of the businesses in your community. Fantastic. We want to keep them, right? But that means that 92% of the businesses are still available. So we have got to be prospecting maniacs. That is the key to growth in any business. We have to prospect. That's why Pulse focuses so much on prospecting. If I click the Engage Flyer button from the side rail or on the map, this is what pops up. It automatically creates what we call an Engage Flyer. I put on my sales hat here for a second for, I think this is called the Oxdown Gazette is the name of this fictitious newspaper. This is the demo site from Pulse. And I literally, by the way, I changed it so it's to Women's Clothing Boutique, and that's just something that we learned from watching our sellers use this. Instead of doing C Boutique, which is what this, I had it on in the previous slide, I'm going to create a Women's Clothing Boutique generic flyer, so I can call on all the women's clothing stores. It's good for anyone. So I might, let's say there's 10 stores in my community that are women's clothing. Put 10 of them on the passenger side of my car. This is my collateral material. I go call on each and every one of them. So if I go call on C Boutique, I say, I'm put on my sales hat for a second. We did women's clothing store research. We know how many households are going to buy the stuff that you sell, madam, sir. Would that be of interest? And she says, oh my gosh, that's exactly what we'd want to know. And I always position the data that way. It is their research. It is the tattoo parlor's research, the clothing research, the furniture store, the appliance, the financial planner. Because that's what we did. In the research we did, I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second, literally we asked 530 different times, do you or anyone in your household intend to shop for women's clothing in the next 12 months? Exactly what a women's clothing store operator want to know. With all the metrics that we, the newspaper industry, sell with, this is the one that will be the most meaningful to them and get them to ask the question that we live for, what do you think I should do? If I go to any women's clothing store and say, I reach 8,000 households that are going to buy the stuff that drives your POS, she will say to me, what do you think I should do? How can I reach that audience? I want as much of that as possible. That's what this does. Then, of course, the sales rep, if they're doing what we want, they ask the questions we want them to ask. Are there co-op dollars available? What are the busy times of the season? Are there things you're trying to sell that are going to be on sale? If you're new to the community, what differentiates you from others? So all the things you hope you ask so that you can prepare a custom presentation to make a sale. Also worth noting on this slide is here are other specific products that you might sell at a women's clothing store. And the reason we include those, we typically include 6, I got rid of a couple of them just to make the slide easier to squeeze onto a screen, is we say to the women's clothing store, you can also buy these at department stores, you can also buy these in catalogs, you can also buy them online. You want as much of this shopping as possible, don't you? Yes, sir, I do. Well, we've got to promote, we've got to talk to the users and tell them why you're better or cheaper or faster or better delivery or whatever. And then we also have, by default, Facebook, direct mail, and local radio. There are a handful of media options in there. You'll see along the right rail you can edit any of this. I just happen to use the default settings. You can edit any of this. Easy for me to say, right? So this slide gets the attention of the advertiser. You will ask questions, be back to them, let's say tomorrow, with a solution. I remember to say that. That's something we see happening all the time. At the top of, let me go back just one second. At the top of that you see 5 tabs. 3 of them get used all the time. The very first one, we see drop-in, email, phone. This is the drop-in suggestions. Literally, you click the drop-in button. These are the words we recommend you say. So we see sales reps pulling this up on their phone, reviewing the words, going into the boutique. We see, again, based upon the utility of the platform, dropping in being the best way to get an appointment for the first time. We just see that again and again, where we all, I know this as well as anyone in this room, send out lots of emails that don't get answers, right? We make lots of phone calls that don't get answers. It's just the way of the world in sales now. So dropping in with unique data that differentiates from every other seller in the community is valuable. So we give you words. We strongly recommend you make these words sound like you, because if you are reading from the script, you will sound like you are reading from a script. But there are similar words for the phone, similar words for the email. I will tell you, again, watching the users, we see this. If you email and say, I will be calling to set an appointment, or words to that effect, or if you email first and say, I'd like to send you some information about how many households are going to buy the stuff that you sell, somewhere between that combo, email, voice, or reverse, is generating between 15 and 25% appointment get ratio. So if your orders are 10 calls, prospecting calls a week, you're going to get 2 or 3 appointments. I mean, it's math, right? It's just basic sales math. So the cheat sheet, 3 ways we will help you get that appointment. Now we will quickly build. You'll see, I mean, literally it's 1 minute. So we've done our customer needs analysis. We've got the appointment. We're going to come back to the women's clothing store tomorrow. So I select my audience. So this just happens to be the default in our demonstration site. But you, newspaper, would load in your solution. So here's my print distribution. Here's my web reach. Maybe I have 2 or 3 or 6 other products which we sell constantly. Literally, the sales rep drags and drops. Or if he gets information, she gets information from the advertiser that would be a custom solution, we can optimize it for that. We also have built-in packages. If indeed there are, again, 6 or 8 things you sell all the time, it's X amount of frequency, this kind of digital, maybe there's some event coming up, you can drag and drop or enter a custom audience. And this is the 1-page proposal that I just manufactured literally in less than a minute. And so I go back to C Boutique and say, thank you so much for your time yesterday. I know you were excited to understand how to best reach that almost 9,000 households are going to buy the stuff that drives your point of sale system. I sat down with my publisher. I spent some time making sure we have the best solution possible to drive as much of that. And we are recommending a $10,000 annual campaign. It's going to include the upcoming Best of West Virginia event. You were third. You didn't get the money last year. You were third last year. We're going to geo-fence your competitors, so we'll know that the shoppers are shopping for the stuff you sell. So we know they're active. They're in the market for the stuff you sell. You said it's important to email. We're going to set up an email campaign. You've identified the specifics that are key to the email. And because there are key times of the month that are year that are busy for you, we're going to heavy up with a quarter-page ad 3 times a week during those times. Here's the best news of all, Mrs. Operator. You need 8 customers over the course of that campaign out of 8,000 to more to pay for that $10,000 investment. That's less than 1 a month, right? It's about 0.75 a month if I do my math real quickly. Every one after that is going to generate $1,400 for you. Now, not all of that's profit, but a whole bunch of that is profit. And she will say, when can I start? It's just like magic. This is where we see good things happen. I think I added a little smiley heart on there at some point. The sales rep loves presenting this ROI because, again, it differentiates us from everybody else in the community. No one else is talking ROI. And the advertiser, sometimes they're not really sure about ROI at all, but if we can say, you need 8 out of 8,000, they're going to think this is doable. They're going to feel comfortable about this commitment, this investment. Now, I mentioned mobile. I want to talk briefly about what the mobile looks like. It's kind of hard to show from up here, so I've done screen grabs and done what I hope is a decent job of representing. So literally, if that's your phone, and by the way, it's easy to log in the Pulse icon onto your phone. You save it once. and it recognizes you. It knows when you're on a mobile device, whether it be a tablet or a phone. And so literally, I've just sold C Boutique, that $10,000 campaign. I'm really feeling good. And I step outside and say, I don't have to be back at the paper, I don't have to be home, I don't have any commitments. I walk outside and there's stores everywhere that we haven't called on. I mean, there are all these prospects. What do I do? Well, there's, what do I do? Financial planner. So I typed in the word financial, and this is one of the categories in Pulse, financial advisors. I could go and go look at all the business. I could do a Google search on my phone, but I want to do a generic one. It's just easier. So I click that button, and the next screen, I can select a couple of things. I can do, just like I did before, the print plus digital. I can add TMC. I can do zip codes. I can do the name of a community. You'll see kind of what you get to pick. Or I can do a custom audience if I know somebody. This is a true prospect. I'll probably do the solution that my intuition, my experience tells me is going to work best. And then I get to this next screen. And this is what it's looking like. So I say, all right, I'm ready. I walk into the financial planner. Let's say E.F. Hutton. Are they still around? They're not around anymore. How about Charles Schwab? Mr. Schwab, this is Sammy from the Gazette. We know how many households are going to buy financial services in the next 12 months. Would that be of interest? He says, oh my gosh, you know that? I said, yes, sir, I do. I'd love to know that. So what do? I hand him my phone. This is an important part of this. I hand him my phone and say, if you'll tap that Get Results button, and you'll see how many. And he does. He says, okay, sure. Almost 2,000 households intend to shop or change financial planning over the next 12 months. They're going to spend over $4 million. 100% of the time, and this is my experience, and maybe it's only 99, but 100% of the time, the financial planner will say, what do you suggest I do? This is a huge number and a lot of spending. This is going to get him excited, and he's been a part of the process. He's discovered there's almost 2,000 households. This is a fantastic way to engage the advertiser. Then you launch into your assessment, qualify the audience, come back tomorrow with a proposal like we presented before. And by the way, that proposal is our solution, one-page solution. When I first started representing Pulse, it was a 10-page solution. What we did when we watched users and we'd go on four-legged calls is there's not many advertisers who want to sit on a 12-page presentation or 10-page presentation. They want to get to it, right? Especially if it's a prospect. So one page. You might have other great pieces of collateral information about the solution you're selling that will be relevant. Certainly some Google data will be helpful, right? If it's a digital campaign. But indeed, this is a way to size the audience and get them involved. Just quickly, I would point out that there is a nice 12-module training program built into Pulse. Some of our clients require it. Some of them say it's just great. If nothing else, it's a nice resource because there's a little video, little assignments on all the elements, all the features built into Pulse. So it's there. Clearly, we do lots of virtual trainings nowadays. Once upon a time, we did a handful of live things. Not so much anymore, but glad to consider that. And I can guarantee you success. There are 3 ways. And 2 of these are going to make a whole bunch of sense to you, but this is one that is totally Pulse-driven. Every Tuesday, every user of the platform gets an email from Pulse. It rotates amongst the top 50 categories. This one happened to be the one last week. I don't really see how this is top 50, but they tell me it is. Laser eye surgery, right? But indeed, it shows up in an inbox. All the rep has to do is click there. All the laser eye surgery prospects in their community, it's customized for the recipient, show up. There's how many households, and then there is a automatically created presentation for a laser eye. Every single rep gets that every Tuesday. And this is the one that I still smile at. This is a horrible mock-up, but I said to a good user, how is it you get your reps to use this all the time? Because that's the number one reason we get fired, right, is because boss says reps aren't using it. Who wants to pay for something that's not being used, right? Whether I'm a consumer or a business operator. So we know what's being used. This is the number, this is the one I still smile at. One ad director said, I have this on every single laptop, phone, desktop of a seller. Oh, I got to do it again. A Post-it note. And this happens to be a digital Post-it note, but that's a reminder. And here's the last thing. This will come as zero surprise to you. If the ad director, the leader, the sales director, whoever it is, says in every weekly meeting, which we all still have, must have really, is who sold what with Pulse this week. 100% of the time, if the boss is using the tool, the sales team will as well. It is the biggest correlation to the success we've ever seen. If there's an active leadership user, then the sales team is using it too. It's so black and white. You guys know that better than I, because you are the real leaders. The report you're going to get from West Virginia Press on Monday, the PDF report of regional data, is 160 pages long. It's a big PDF. It's 130 questions. Fully 100 of those questions are shopping intent, the guts of the shop, everything you've seen thus far. But there's another 50 pages that have other stuff. So I want to talk about the other stuff just for a second. So when you get this report and a user guide, by the way, a little bit, here's what the user guide looked like. It's 4 pages of my prose, so if you don't like it, blame it on me. It tells you how to use that 160-page document. Read it. Please read it. You will sell more Tuesday if you read it on Monday. But there's more than this, the shopping. You're going to get the user guide I just talked about. I personally think that some of this would be valuable from a content standpoint, right? I mean, here's what people are doing in our community. So maybe, the newsroom would find some value in that. We have some clients who take this information and publish lead generation ads. So for instance, if 10% of the households intend to shop for furniture, they'll create a little lead gen ad and it says 10% of the households are going to buy furniture. So guess what? Every now and then the furniture guy says, hey, what's that all about? If nothing else, when the sales rep goes out and calls on a furniture store, they say, I wondered what this ad was all about, right? So you can do lead gen with this. There are digital metrics beyond Google or whatever platform you're using, analytics. And by that I mean things like, if you're in the market, do you use Facebook to shop? Do you use Google to shop? So indeed, there's some questions about the behaviors using digital solutions, which will be helpful when you're having a digital conversation. There are also lifestyle and behavior questions, things like, do you intend to donate? Do you intend to join a club? Do you intend to vote? Big election year coming up pretty soon, so wouldn't it be nice to know if households intend to vote at local, state, and national elections? Of course it would be helpful. So we have them. It doesn't load into the shopping intent data, but it's in the data itself, and it will be helpful as you're making calls, whether it be advocacy or actually politician, right? There are business plans. There's about 4 questions about are you the owner or operator of a business? If so, skips to a different line of questions. If so, what are you going to buy? I mean, both advertising and equipment. So there's 4 questions there. So absolutely positively something that would help if you're talking to a business about their purchasing plans. Basic demographics, I actually looked again and counted again. There aren't 10, I think there's only 8, so my apologies. I didn't change that at the last minute, but just basic, do you own your home, do you rent, kids, income, education, the things which don't come up all that often, unless you're calling on agencies perhaps, and sometimes the senior citizen, the assisted livings want to know that you're reaching an elderly audience, those kinds of things, it comes up. So there's some basic demos that'll be helpful. I'd be remiss if I don't say the long-term value in going and talking to businesses with data is invaluable. Even if they say, thanks but no thanks, I'm way too busy, go away, I don't want to talk to you for 6 months. You're going to be the only sales rep in your community, I can say this with 99% accuracy, with Pulse, with shopping data. There is one other source of shopping data in the country. It only has 20 measures. Pulse has 535. So you, in all likelihood, will be the only one in your community. We will know that. If by chance there's a competitive in your community, we'll know it and we'll let you know in advance. There's only one that I know of right now, and it's in Colorado. I'll just leave it at that. Nothing bad happens when you sell with data and differentiate yourselves. Only good things happen. Already said that. And again, 100%, I mean, every time I've asked an ad director or leader, what do you think? And they said, we think it would be more valuable to sell with data than without. That's a little view of what the user guide is. Again, it's 3.5-page document. My contact information is at the bottom. I hope you'll find value. And these are the questions I get asked most often. And then we'll wrap up. Every time I do a training session, this is an important point because, again, we don't want sellers to be researchers. We're in trouble if indeed they start talking about methodologies. And so, how do you know this? And the answer is so elegant and so simple. When the advertiser says to Sammy, the sales rep, let's pretend I'm an experienced sales rep. He says, I don't know, Sammy, how do you know this? We asked our readers, we asked those who use our tools what they intend to do, and this is what they told us. You don't talk about sample size, you don't talk about tolerances. You say, we asked the people who use our product, this is what they told us. It's so elegant, it's so simple, it's not researchy, and the advertiser, him or herself, says, well, that makes sense to me because I asked people when they come in the store how they heard of me. We're going to run a radio campaign. So I say to the advertiser, if I'm the sales rep, say, if that radio campaign's working for you, do it. You're the only one in position to evaluate the efficacy of the campaigns you're publishing or you're promoting. Here's what we know. Based upon the information we have, 15, 20, 18%, something like that, of the households bought something in the last month based upon a radio campaign. Comes straight out of the Pulse. 47, 48, 50% of households bought because of newspaper. You just aren't reaching the audience we reach as well as you expected. So it's not a bad channel. It could be a great channel. And by the way, you talk about in the radio discussion, you talk about the fragmentation. As you guys know better than I, there's usually lots of radio stations. You got to buy a lot of stations to get the decent reach. So indeed, if it's working for you, keep it up. We're just saying it doesn't adequately penetrate our audience. The beauty is you actually don't have to convince the advertiser these numbers are real. First of all, they're going to be thrilled to have shopping data. Again, no one else has ever brought advertiser unless they have Pulse data. No one else has ever brought Pulse shopping data to a merchant. But if that advertiser says, let's say that C Boutique says, Sammy, I simply do not believe that 50% of the households are going to shop for women's clothing. It's impossible for me to get my hands around that. I said, ma'am, you know your business far better than I. What's the percentage of households who you think are going to shop for women's clothing in the next year? It's 40%. I say, okay, we reach 18,000 households, 40% of them are going to reach, what is that? 6,200 households, not 8,800 households. She says, okay, would you like to reach those 6,200 households? She says, yes, I absolutely would. You can. Let's talk about the best way to do that. So indeed, you actually can use their numbers, and if you're using their numbers, you're going to help them. They're going to help you sell them. You don't reach my target audience. I am in sales heaven when an advertiser tells me this. The favorite words I have ever seen in my life. Would you please tell me exactly what your target audience is? Between my traditional solutions and my digital solutions, I can reach every single one of them if you want me to. I promise you. It is impossible for me not to do that. So you launch into your customer needs analysis and you make sure you respond in a way that is 100% in alignment with what the advertiser said. So I love that question. It used to come up a lot more. And this one I also love too, because I say, oh my gosh, there's no question the last few years and the last decade, we know the business better than the merchants do, right, have been tough on newspapers. I usually focus on COVID times, pandemic, but I say it's been tough on all of us. But what you probably don't know, that as newspapers have migrated to a more digital tomorrow, we actually can reach more households, more users than we've ever reached in our history, in our illustrious history. And I said, well, I didn't know that. I said, can you prove that? I said, well, yeah, I can prove it. Here's my data, here's the Pulse. I mean, there's a whole bunch of ways to prove it. So I love it when that comes up. Here's what's available. to Andy's question, you're going to get the Pulse of America report for the region, which I'm testing my memory. There's the sample, by the way, for this room. We won't talk sample sizes outside of this room, but sample is 1,400 households completed the survey in the region, which consisted of North Carolina, Kentucky, West Virginia, and I'm forgetting one state, but I'll think of it before I finish this. So more than adequate sample, 1,400. I mean, the minimum back in my Belden days and the local days is about 400. We had 1,400. In a national, I'll give you some, I'll put on my research hat for a second. In a national political election, if I were polling voters after they exited the precinct, I need 800 out of 260 million registered voters to project an outcome with plus or minus 5% accuracy. We've got 1,400 out of 4 states, and not 300 or 260 million, I promise you, right? So it feels very good. So you're going to get the Pulse of America regional data from Don and his team on Monday. The next wave starts next month. I will strongly encourage, this falls into one of the things you absolutely positively must do, even if you do nothing else, is to participate in the next wave. Then you'll get the next bit of data. And literally, so the way this works is simply you publish ads in paper, online, through your email channels, whatever, and say, we're participating in a nationwide survey to collect information so we can better serve the community. If you complete the survey, you'll be enrolled in a contest and win $1,000, which Pulse provides. You don't have to do anything. So you're going to give up pixels and paper, and you'll get your own research. To Andy's point, if you wanted your own Clarksburg data, if you wanted your own Charleston data, you could do this research right in your own community and get your own sample. I would tell you from a research standpoint, 99% of the time that's overkill, because the differences between shopping is just are so minuscule between regions or between states, it's hardly worth doing. Where we've seen dramatic differences are after bad things, tornadoes, hurricanes, etc. And things are a little bit different in Hawaii, and especially now, of course, and a little bit different in Alaska. But if it's West Virginia, you don't need to do it. That, and you will be getting this deck, by the way. Don's going to, and his team are going to distribute this deck. So if you go to that link, you'll get all the materials you need to participate in the Pulse of America survey. Again, I am going to probably burden you with an email sometime next week and say, thanks for being here. If you want to participate, let me know. But indeed, that link will get you there if you want to go check it out right now. You're going to get the user guide. You've seen an example of that. You're going to get a copy of the deck. I've already mentioned that. And for anyone who's interested, and this is the only sales pitch, if you will, in learning more and want to access Pulse, the platform, the tools which I explained, because of your membership at West Virginia Press, your first month is free.
Thank you.